All right, welcome. Let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover today. Welcome to this presentation on what's new in Laserfiche 10. I'm Justin Pava, Technical Product Manager at Laserfiche, and I'm very excited to be able to present a first look at some of our upcoming product releases. This is the second of 3 webinars we are doing on the Laserfiche 10 release. We already had a presentation on Web Access 10 in October, and there will be one more on Quick Fields in December. The limited release of Laserfiche 10 will be available to our resellers and early adopters later this month, with the full release coming at Empower 2016 in January. This webinar covers new features and enhancements in Laserfiche Forms, Workflow, Mobile, Social BPM, and the Laserfiche Directory Server. Most of the features I'll be showing were directly inspired by customer requests or feedback, so maybe you'll see something you requested. This webinar is not covering Web Access 10, as we already did a full session on it last month. I strongly encourage those of you who missed the last session to go ahead and check it out online. Web Access 10 is a complete overhaul, reimagined from the ground up, providing a modern, streamlined, and responsive experience when working in your Laserfiche repository on a desktop, tablet, and mobile environments. It also brings a host of new features, such as starred entries, discussions, quick access views, direct email drag and drop, settings lockdown, and many, many others. Definitely check it out and see why we spent a whole session on it. Anyway, let's get going with our first product, Laserfiche Forms. The first new feature in Laserfiche Forms that I want to discuss is Teams and Enhanced Task Management. Laserfiche Forms allows you to map out business processes, which usually contain specific tasks. In many cases, there isn't always going to be just a single person performing a task. There might be an entire team, any member of which can be assigned to handle this particular task. In Forms 10, you can assign tasks to an entire team in addition to a specific individual. Specific users can be assigned to one or more teams, and processes assigned to a team will show up as a pending task in the inbox of all team members, ensuring that this task gets divvied out appropriately. You can also skip this step and have the task automatically assigned to members in a round-robin fashion. In this scenario, I'm using the example of requests coming into our support team. The team has 3 members, myself acting as the manager, and then Ray and Shule. Notice that we can also create and assign roles to each member. These roles can be used with automatic assignment so that a value specified in the form itself could determine who the task is automatically assigned to. In our example, we can set up the process so that Quick Fields cases goes directly to Ray and workflow cases go directly to Shule, but server cases go into the general pool since either member could work on them. Let's take a more in-depth look at the new task management features. I'm now going to log into Forms as myself, acting in the role of team manager. Signing in brings up my inbox, showing me my tasks, drafts, and history. New to Forms 10, though, is the next section, Teams. This will list all teams that I'm affiliated with. In this case, that's just the support team, although a user may belong to multiple teams. Clicking on the support team brings up the team's inbox, where we can view all current team tasks. You can display currently assigned tasks, like I'm showing right now, available tasks that are currently unassigned, as well as completed tasks. As the team manager, I can view all tasks, regardless of who they are assigned to. If I want to see quickly how many tasks each team member has, I can take advantage of Forms 10's new column grouping and filtering. When I click on the Assign To column, you'll see that it not only sorts, but it also categorizes. This makes it very easy to see all my team member task allocation at once. I can also collapse or expand any section as desired. Sorting by due date groups the tasks by date ranges, such as tasks due today, tomorrow, later this week, or already overdue, as you can see here in red. Forms also adds dynamic column filtering, accessible by clicking the filter button. This enables filter mode, which adds filter buttons to each of the individual columns. Clicking any of them allows you to filter any given column or set of columns. For example, I can filter the Assign To column to just bring up tasks assigned to Ray. And then I can filter due date to just show the overdue tasks. When I'm done, I can cancel the filters by clicking Remove Filters. Clicking the main filter button turns off filter mode. Note that sort grouping and column filtering is available throughout the Laserfiche Forms inbox, not just in the Teams section. Now, let's go to the Teams list of available tasks and see what's sitting here. We have a couple tasks that are currently unassigned. By selecting the task and showing the details, I can bring up the task information summary. I can also click Action History to see the history of this task, such as when it was submitted. Since Ray already has an overdue task, I'm going to go ahead and assign this to Shule. First, though, I'm going to update the due date. I can do this by clicking the Task Overflow button and selecting Edit Due Date. This allows me to provide the date and time the task should be due. I'm going to set this to be due at the end of the week. I'm going to go ahead and assign this task to Shule now by clicking the Task button again and selecting Reassign. This brings up the Reassign Task dialog, where I can assign the task to any of the team members or even a different team altogether. I can also include a message here. Now, before I reassign the task, I'm going to go ahead and sign into Shule so you can see something really neat. I'm going to do this in another browser right now. So I'm signed in as myself as the manager on the right, and then on the left, I'm going to sign in as Shule. See, I'm now signed in as her, and I'm looking at the two items sitting in her inbox right now. Now, as the manager, I'll click Reassign. You can see that the task immediately showed up in Shule's task list without the need to wait or refresh. Forms 10 now updates users' task lists in real time, ensuring that they are always looking at the most up-to-date listing. All right, let's focus on Shule's view now. You'll notice that we are in her normal task list right now, not the team-specific one. Tasks assigned to her both directly or through specific teams will all show up in her main task list, allowing her to see all of them together. If she had tasks from multiple teams, she could click the Team column to group tasks for each team together. Right now, it all groups from the one team that she's in. If we move to the Support Team task list, you'll see that Shule can view tasks assigned to both her and Ray. This is because this team is configured as open, so all team members can see each other's load and tasks. You can also set up a team as closed, where only the manager can see everyone's tasks. Shule opens the task that I just sent her and looks at the action history. By selecting Show Details, she can see when it was reassigned and also the comment that I provided. Looking at the title and due date of this task, she realizes that she won't be able to finish it before she has to go on vacation tomorrow. She can send it back to the general pool by clicking Reassign in the upper corner. All task assignment actions, including updating the due date by team managers, can be performed in the specific task in addition to the inbox listing. To reassign the task back to the general pool, Shule selects Team and then the Support team. This task has been successfully reassigned. You can see it's no longer in the list of assigned tasks. It's back in our available list. While looking at the available tasks, Shule notices a quick task that she could complete today. She can volunteer it directly from the listing by going to the Task Action menu and selecting Assign to Me. That task has now been added into her task list. Shule opens up the task and starts working on it. However, she needs to go look up the exact troubleshooting steps before submitting her reply and doesn't want to lose the work she's already done. Previous versions of Laserfiche Forms have allowed initial submitters to save forms as drafts, and now that same functionality is available for individual tasks. By clicking the Save as Drafts button, the current status of the task has been saved. You'll notice at the top, it indicates this is now a draft. And if we return to the task list, you'll see it also is marked as draft here as well. Shule could go ahead and finish the task now, or discard her changes by selecting Discard Draft. All right, that concludes the demo on task management. Let's return to the slides. In this demo, we looked at a few scenarios related to enhanced task management. We looked at the process of assigning and releasing tasks, both from the manager and team member's perspective, as well as assigning task due date. We also saw enhancements to working with tasks in the inbox, such as updating the task list in real time, the ability to save in-progress tasks as drafts, and column grouping and filtering. Next, we're going to move from task participation to the actual form itself. The first topic I'd like to cover is built-in native calculation formulas. Many of you already use JavaScript to set up complicated calculations in your forms, and I'm happy to say that we now offer this as native functionality. Calculations can be added to any number, text, date, or currency field. The calculations themselves use the Open Formula standard, used by both Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. Here's a basic example of what you can do with these formulas. Here, we're listing the submitter's age based on the provided birth date. This requires some manipulation to do in JavaScript, but now you can just use the date-diff formula here. Basically, this translates to calculate the difference between the value in the birth date field and today, and give me the number of years. That's what the Y at the end is. This more complicated example shows combining multiple formulas to get a conditional result. In this case, we are calculating the total price for conference attendees when they register. The complicating factor here is that the price changes depending on if this is before or after November 20th, the early bird cutoff date, shown at the top of the form. The first formula here counts up the number of total attendees and places that in the total number of attendees field. Okay, straightforward so far. The second calculation might look pretty complicated at first, but it's actually rather straightforward as well. What we're doing here is checking if today's date is before or after the early bird cutoff date, which we've shown in blue here, in order to determine which price to use. The formula then multiplies the total number of attendees that we determined in the first calculation with the appropriate price. This gets us the correct final price at the bottom of the form, accounting for both the selected number of attendees and whether the early bird rate is still eligible. Each of these calculations was an individual line and formula, just a single line, that added a large amount of power to your forms without having to do manual scripting. Alongside the calculation enhancements, the number field has also been updated. It can now include one or more decimal places and also supports automatically adding the thousands delimiter. The new geolocation field type is designed for entering longitude and latitude coordinates. Submitters can enter coordinates manually or tell the form to automatically determine the current location. This is especially useful when submitting forms through a mobile device and automatically capturing the current location. Looking up lists and values from external data sources is a lot more flexible in Forms 10, providing the ability to tie multiple lookups together across multiple columns and rows, specifically choose the sort order, and provide specific security as to what elements users can and can't edit. In this scenario, we have a supply request form, sorted alphabetically by code, where users are unable to change the current codes, item names, and posted inventory quantities. However, as the submitter, I can request how many of each item I need. I can also add new items to the list, as I've done at the bottom, which will be written back to the external data source and added to future lookups. New internal processing enhancements help users work with more involved processes. For example, more control is now available for parallel processing scenarios. In this scenario, we have two simultaneous sets of tasks occurring at the same time by different people. If either team rejects the submission, we don't want the other team to continue to do their portions of it. That's just wasted work. The new signal event allows one part of a process to signal to other parts, regardless of if they are separate branches of the overall process. Notice in the bottom pathway that the same person is involved in two consecutive user task steps. First, they perform the task in step 1, then Forms run some processing through workflow, and then the same user needs to perform an additional task. Forms 10 now allows you to directly load the next task when it's assigned to the same person, instead of requiring them to wait for an email notification and access it that way. As processes get more and more involved, it can be very easy to end up with a mess of actions and arrows going every which way. The Forms 10 process modeler is now grid-based, helping to provide a cleaner design that is easier to work with. There's also a handy auto cleanup button that compacts the view and cleans up extra white space. The process modeler also now includes the ability to separate different aspects of your process into stages. These are the separate blocks you see on the tops of the screen here. Notice that in this scenario, we have defined 3 stages in our hiring process: initial review, screening, and interview. In addition to keeping the process model clean and clear, stages are also used for tracking processes in the new operational dashboard. The operational dashboard shows the current status of a process, such as how many instances are currently running or at a particular stage, and how many tasks are at a risk of hitting their deadline or already overdue. Notice that our 3 same stages are here: initial review, screening, and interview, matching up with the stages on the process modeler. Organizing your process into distinct steps helps to identify exactly where in the process each instance is at. The operational dashboard report is automatically generated for every active process and provides a way to quickly see the overall instance activity. We've looked at a number of new features in Laserfiche Forms 10. Among the most notable are the ability to assign tasks to an entire team and then delegate them amongst the team members, saving in-progress tasks as drafts to come back to later, native built-in calculations, providing numerous numerical functions without scripting, enhancements to lookup and processing, providing more control and better user experience across the forms process, and the introduction of process stages and the operational dashboard, providing a one-stop report for monitoring process activity. Now, Workflow 10 brings 2 notable new features: dynamic document creation and a significantly tighter integration with Laserfiche Forms. Let's take a look at dynamic document creation first. The new Update Word document activity in Workflow 10 allows you to dynamically create Word documents from a base Word document template. This is extremely powerful, providing the ability to automatically generate personalized letters, agendas, permits, forms, any other type of document that can be constructed using token substitution. As an example, we can use Workflow to dynamically generate invoices. Here you see the base document used as a source template with tags in place for the billing address, invoice line, items, and invoice number. Now, here's this document created by Workflow with all of the tags dynamically filled in from tokens. Any document based on a standardized Word template can be generated in this manner. This process makes use of the mail merge function in Microsoft Word, which can also be thought of as field merge. Basically, any token you have from a workflow process can be used to generate the new document. While the document creation actions are performed on Word documents, you can also choose to generate a PDF at the end of the process. That way you can generate the appropriate types of document format from your particular level, from your particular scenario. Now, one neat thing here that you might notice is that you can also use barcode fonts for some of the base fields, creating barcodes from your tokens in the final document, as we've done here with the invoice number in the upper right. The other major enhancement in Workflow 10 is enhanced integrations with forms. This centers on two new activities. The Invoke Business Process activity launches a new forms process from Workflow. And the set business process variables activity lets workflow pass information into forms processes. Essentially, workflow can now send information to forms and can talk back to forms when forms calls into it. The first side of this is launching forms from a workflow, an action that is now natively present as a workflow activity. This action allows you to initiate a new forms process while passing along starting parameters. This allows you to perform actions like triggering a forms process based off of a document in a Laserfiche repository. Let's take an example of pushing out HR documents to your organization where employees must read the document and sign that they've done so. I expect all of you have had to do this with, say, employee handbook updates. In this case, all we really need in Laserfiche Forms is a generic form for users to say, I've read and understand this document. It doesn't make sense to have to make a new one each time. So here, HR selects the document in the desktop client or web access and launches a business process on it. This starts a workflow that compiles all the people this needs to be sent to, collects information like the current document ID, and launches our generic form, starting a process sent to each relevant employee. When the employees open their forms, they can see the relevant document displayed in the Web Access Document Viewer directly embedded in the form itself. This is just one example of ways you can make use of this tighter integration between workflow and forms. Even more powerful, workflow processes can be inserted right in the middle of form process and directly impact the current process. For example, you might have a travel request process where the itinerary is submitted through forms, passed along to workflow to calculate mileage and reimbursement rates, and then send it back to forms to show you the price. In this way, you can really leverage both the user-friendliness of forms with the processing power and flexibility of workflow to create any number of processes. When launched from forms, workflow can populate any forms variable for the current process. Note that this also ties in with the functionality to automatically load the next task that we discussed in the forms section. The initiator will immediately see the updates. Workflow also now supports all of the same formulas and calculations that we discussed earlier in the forms section, greatly expanding the ability to do all sorts of calculations on your tokens using the Open Formula standard. Watermarks can now be applied to email attachments through workflow. This matches the current functionality offered in Web Access and the desktop client to add a watermark to exported documents. Workflow can also automatically enable and update Microsoft Exchange out-of-office notifications. There isn't a long list of new features in Workflow 10, but the ones that are there are extremely powerful. Dynamic document creation lets you generate letters, agendas, or any other type of form document from a base Word document template. The enhanced interactions with forms allows workflow to respond to a forms process launching workflow, filling in any field values with tokens from the workflow process. It also provides the ability to easily launch new forms processes from workflow and pass along the starting parameters. Next, I'm going to cover new features in the Laserfiche Mobile app. This is actually already recently released, but it's important enough that I want to cover it here. A new Windows mobile app was released in August, bringing all of the Laserfiche Mobile functionality, both forms and your document repository, to Windows phones, tablets, and also as a desktop store app for Windows 8.1 and 10. Now you have Laserfiche Mobile on Windows devices alongside iOS and Android. Here's an example of repository browsing in the Windows app. You can see that this provides a user interface that will be familiar to Windows app users, both in the overall look as well as the buttons used to perform various actions. It also ties into standard Windows applications. Here you can see an example of the Windows app views for Laserfiche Forms, both filling out a form and viewing your pending tasks. Moving on to Laserfiche 10, Mobile has been updated to support the new functionality in Forms, most notably Team Task Management. Here in the middle, we can see users assigning and releasing tasks to and from the global team pool through the mobile app. Laserfiche Mobile also provides flexible sorting and grouping of tasks. In this example on the right, tasks have been sorted by due date, putting tasks that are overdue or due today at the top of the list. In last month's Web Access session, I discussed two new quick access features in Web Access and the desktop client: starred entries and recently opened documents. Starred entries allows a user to star documents and folders for future quick access. And this is tied in with Laserfiche Mobile as well. Entries can be starred in mobile, Web Access, and the desktop client, and the same starred quick access list is present in all three applications. The quick access view of recently opened documents is similarly shared across all three products. Laserfiche Mobile provides the ability to manually edit photos on the device. Users can rotate, crop, or perform color conversion on photos from their device's gallery or camera before sending them to the repository or attaching them to forms. Quick Capture is an exciting new way to take advantage of this image editing functionality without even having to be connected to the Laserfiche repository. Photos can be edited offline and set to upload to the Laserfiche repository when you are next connected. Alternatively, they can be directly emailed to others or even shared with other services such as Google Drive. In this way, you can use mobile's image editing functionality in scenarios where Laserfiche isn't even involved. Speaking of image editing, Laserfiche Mobile 10 introduces the ability to add signatures directly to an image alongside other image enhancements. Signatures allow you to sign with your finger or a stylus on your device, indicate the position and color, and then burn the signature image right into the original document. This provides an easy way for people to sign images and documents on the go, while ensuring that your signature stays attached to the document. Signatures can be added when editing photos and documents for import into the Laserfiche document repository, as forms attachments, or even completely offline through Quick Capture. We've looked at a number of new features in Mobile 10. The Windows app brings Laserfiche Mobile to Windows phones, tablets, and the Windows Desktop App Store, alongside the existing iOS and Android apps. Mobile has been updated to include full support for Forms team and task management, and syncs up with Web Access and the desktop client to set up and display starred entries and your recently opened documents. Capture provides offline support for mobile's image editing functionality for later import into the Laserfiche repository or even situations that don't tie directly into Laserfiche. Lastly, signatures can now be added and burned into the documents and images when importing into the repository, uploading as forms attachments, or through quick capture. Laserfiche Social BPM is our discussion and collaboration product, first introduced as a preview in Laserfiche 9.2. Those of you who use Laserfiche Answers are familiar with Social BPM, as Answers is built on the Social BPM collaboration site. Social BPM is no longer a preview in Laserfiche 10 and has some exciting new features. Those of you who attended the Web Access 10 webinar last month have already seen some of this. Web Access 10, in conjunction with Social BPM, now provides the ability to have discussions directly on documents and folders. It's very common to have questions on a specific document or instructions about the next steps for entries that enter a certain folder. And now you can do that directly in the document viewer or folder browser. Each document is a single post, and there are 3 types of subposts you can use as replies: discussions, questions, and tasks. Questions are a standard Q&A format, where a person asks a question and others can reply. The original poster can then mark a question as the resolved answer, as I've done here on Connie's reply. Discussion subposts do not have a specific question and answer, but are an ongoing conversation thread. Lastly, task subposts allow you to create a task list that both you and others can check off on. You'll notice that it lists who checked off a specific item here. Discussions are tied directly into Social BPM, and you can jump between the two of them. Having started our discussion in Web Access, we can go directly to the post in the Social BPM collaboration site. In this case, the document itself is in the post, and you can see that the document itself is embedded directly into the post. The document is the post. This is actually an embedded Web Access document viewer that users can use to read the document directly from Social BPM. You can also do this with folders as well, which will embed the folder tree. Scrolling down our post in Social BPM, we can see our subposts. Here we see the same items that were in the Web Access Discussions tab, but with all the functionality of Social BPM, such as thumbs-upping a specific subpost or reply, or the Social BPM reply authoring tools. Subposts and replies can be edited or created here as well, and they will display back in Web Access. I'm showing this in the context of Web Access discussions, but separate reply threads, the ability to reply with questions, checklists, and further discussions, and the ability to flag a reply as resolved are all enhancements on posts made directly through the Social BPM collaboration site as well. We have an internal Social BPM server we use for discussions and collaboration within our product teams. We used this throughout the Laserfiche 10 release for discussing and updating feature designs. It became very critical to be able to see what changed and when, which brings us to Social BPM's new versioning functionality. You can view all versions of a post to see the evolution of the post's content. You can also compare versions directly on the post to see exactly what changed. In this example, Jared changed our URL reference to reflect updates to product functionality, and we're able to clearly see the exact change to ensure everything gets correctly updated to match. Now, while all updates are automatically stored as versions, individual versions can be deleted to avoid cluttering up the list with unnecessary items. Another new feature of Social BPM is real-time notifications directly in the collaboration site. The bell icon on the far right indicates when you have pending notifications, and you can click on it to view them. You don't need to worry about following up on them right away, as a log of all notifications is stored for you to review in your user profile. Posts, topics, or groups you have subscribed to will show up in notifications. You'll also receive reputation notifications here as well. If someone thumbs up your post, you'll be informed. In addition to the notification log, Social BPM now has real-time updates on posts themselves. If edits are made to a post you are currently reading, you'll be notified of this and prompted to reload the post. Speaking of reputation points, here's a fun one. Social BPM now provides the ability to create and configure achievements, rank levels, and badges, reflecting a user's helpfulness and involvement in the site. This is a great way to bring your organization into the site and provide reinforcement for their participation. We've looked at the revamped discussion post type, with distinct subposts and the ability to mark replies as resolved. We've also looked at both directions of integrations with Web Access 10, the Social BPM discussion pane on documents and folders, and the Web Access document viewer embedded in the Social BPM collaboration site post. Lastly, we've discussed using versioning to retain a change log of posts, real-time notifications, and achievements and badges. Note that all of these updates will be present on our own Laserfiche answers, answers.laserfiche.com, in the very near future. The last product I want to discuss in this presentation is the Laserfiche Directory Server for Laserfiche Rio. The Laserfiche Directory Server was first introduced in Laserfiche 9.2 as an updated Laserfiche Rio license manager, and brings some significant architectural enhancements in Laserfiche 10. Laserfiche users are a new user type that is created, licensed, and managed directly through the Laserfiche Directory Server. These are basically the replacement for repository users. Repository users are users defined on an individual Laserfiche repository instead of a global directory service like Windows accounts. If you've needed to create an ad hoc user on one repository, that's a repository user. Those of you familiar with repository users know that they have some major limitations. By being specific to individual repositories, there's no centralized management, meaning all accounts are independent of each other and they are very inefficient in terms of licensing. This is particularly cumbersome for a Laserfiche Rio environment, where you're likely to have multiple Laserfiche servers and repositories. Laserfiche users managed through the Laserfiche Directory Server avoid these limitations, acting as one user account throughout the entire environment. Here's the current setup of using manually created user accounts that aren't coming from Windows Active Directory or eDirectory. On the left, we have repository users in the Laserfiche server. On the right, we have forms authenticated participants. In both cases, users have to be managed and defined in the individual application, licensed by pools of repository or participant licenses allocated just to that specific server. In this example, Jim actually requires 3 licenses, 2 repository named user allocations, and 1 forms participant allocation, even though it's all the same user. Jane requires an additional forms participant license as well. With Laserfiche Directory users, all user management happens on the Laserfiche Directory Server itself. This means that I only have to create each of these users once, and they are known for all the applications as the same user. Most importantly, they also only require 1 named user or form authenticated participant license, regardless of how many repositories or forms instances they use. This means you're making much more efficient use of your licenses. Basically, this addresses all of the current limitations with manually created user accounts. They effectively now act exactly like Windows accounts. do want to note that individual repository security, as well as determining access to a repository in the first place, is still all controlled in the individual repository or forms instance. Also, there's no requirement to use Laserfiche directory users in place of repository users, so you can migrate at your own pace. Since a Laserfiche directory user is one account managed across your entire installation, passwords are also universal. Password policy can be set in one place on the Laserfiche directory server to apply to all users. A user can update their password directly across the board without having to go one by one through each individual repository, as well as reset their password for one place. Laserfiche Users is one part of the new functionality provided by the Laserfiche Directory Server 10. The other is fully integrated single sign-on across all Laserfiche web applications. In this scenario, the directory server itself handles user tokens and authentication, instead of relying on the individual Laserfiche applications. Note that while this ties in very nicely for Laserfiche users, you can also take advantage of this with Windows directory or eDirectory users as well, which also means you no longer need to worry about Kerberos for integrated single sign-on. By clicking the Login with Windows Authentication link, you will be automatically signed in through Windows Authentication without having to provide any user or password information without any external system configuration. Having signed in through the Laserfiche directory server, you are now authenticated for all Laserfiche applications. In this case, we were prompted to sign in when accessing web access. Having done so, we can then load forms directly, and we won't be prompted to sign in again. It already knows who we are. You can also switch directly from one forms instance to another in Laserfiche Mobile, without having to sign out each time. This also applies for signing out. Instead of having to keep tabs of signing out on all applications, signing out in one signs you out across the board, giving you clearer control of when you are or are not signed in. With Laserfiche directory users and single sign-on, the Laserfiche directory server is now responsible for initial user authentication. It's critical that it's always available. Failover clustering support has been added, ensuring that an outage on the Laserfiche directory server will not take down your entire system. That concludes our look at Laserfiche Directory Server 10. We looked at Laserfiche directory users, allowing you to create, manage, and license users in one place across all Laserfiche applications. We also looked at single sign-on, providing the ability to sign in and out once across all Laserfiche web applications. And we covered that the Laserfiche directory server now supports failover clustering. All right, that was a lot there. This wraps up the presentation on what's new in Laserfiche 10, and I hope you've enjoyed this walkthrough of the many new enhancements coming in the upcoming release. The Laserfiche 10 suite will have an initial limited release later this month, available to our resellers and early adopters. The full release will be at Empower 2016, taking place this January right here at the Long Beach Convention Center. Now, this has been the second of a three-part webinar series tied to the Laserfiche 10 release. Next month, we're dedicating an entire session to an in-depth look at the new QuickFields 10, which has been reimagined and overhauled for this release. QuickFields 10 brings a new QuickFields server and administration console, providing centralized management of shared sessions and document classes, as well as highly configurable security. A completely new scanner operator application featuring an easy-to-use interface made specifically for scanner operators. and new web-based document revision, allowing multi-step review processes and distributed revision workload among multiple users. Come back next month to find out more about all of these items. Don't forget to check out the recording of last month's session on Web Access 10. That was a whole session in itself, and there's a lot to see there. And of course, we'll have hands-on labs, training sessions at Empower 2016, where you can try out Laserfiche 10 for yourself. I hope to see you at the next webinar, as well as at Empower. All right, we're going to go ahead and go through the questions you've submitted now and what time we have left. We'll send out answers to any questions we don't get to, but you can also ask questions about the upcoming releases or anything at all related to Laserfiche on our answer site at answers.laserfiche.com. Thank you for attending, and let's start going through the questions. In the last webinar, you discussed how users will be able to directly import from cloud applications, such as OneDrive and Google Drive. Does that include Dropbox? Is there a list available for all of the cloud import services? Right now, it is OneDrive, OneDrive for Business, and Google Drive specifically. We're looking into expanding it to various other services, and if you have particular ones you'd like us to look into, that'd be a great thing to post on Laserfiche Answers about. For documents or images, you mean either Word or PDF files can be signed. I assume this is meaning for Laserfiche Mobile Signature. The way Laserfiche Mobile Signature works is it signs on the image of the document. So what you have is you have your image document, you run it. It's kind of like an annotation in that you select this section of your document and you perform this and you type in your signature, but then it's burned into the document there. So it is not something you can change at a later time. It's actually in the core image at that point. This is specific to image documents, but of course you can then convert those to other formats like PDF, and since that signature is burned into the image, it will of course be there as well. Does versioning need to be enabled per document, or can it be turned on universally? Oh, you mean for your Laserfiche repository. You actually can enable versioning across the board in your repository right now through the desktop client or web access. There's an option on any given folder to turn on versioning both for newly created documents in that folder, as well as to enable versioning for everything that's already there. So that's already in there. You can look at, if you want to put it on your entire repository, you can just do that on the root folder, and it's there. Oh, someone asked what BPM stands for in Social BPM. It is not beats per minute, although I like that suggestion. It is Social Business Process Management. It's a way to add this social community element to your business processes. Let's see, got a couple questions about forms, about mobile having offline capabilities with forms. I've definitely heard that one a few times. The team is working on that. I asked them about that just yesterday since I knew I would get the question on that, and that is something they are actively working on. It is not in the initial release of Forms 10. It's Forms or Mobile 10. It is something they're hoping to have very soon. Got a question about Mac support. Is Laserfiche 10, are the desktop applications in Laserfiche 10 supported on Mac? No desktop applications of Laserfiche are natively supported on Mac. We've had multiple sites that use Windows emulators on Macs, and those work fine. Otherwise, our web applications are all completely supported through Safari, particularly for the mobile scenario. But of course, that applies to Mac environments as well. Let's see what else you've got. Are we able to generate pages in Workflow yet? Presumably generating pages from PDFs. That's not there in the current Workflow 10 version, but that is another item that I asked the team specifically about, like Forms offline mode, and they've told me this is something they're working on actively, and hope to have an option for in the near future. Let's see, have a question on the licensing of Social BPM. Is that per user or one license model? Social BPM actually is included in Laserfiche Rio installations. So there's no additional licensing that you need to worry about. Any Laserfiche users are able to, Laserfiche named users are all able to access Social BPM. And then, of course, participate both in the collaboration site and in, say, discussions and web access. What features presented in this presentation are going to be, I assume you mean in Team and United, if any. Obviously, most of what I've shown are focused on Laserfiche Rio and Laserfiche Avante. Laserfiche Forms and Mobile are specifically in, Laserfiche Avante or Laserfiche Rio. Social BPM and the Laserfiche directory server are explicitly in Laserfiche Rio. Of the features that I showed, let's see, probably the workflow components, like the calculations or the dynamic document creation, that will be in, I assume, available in Team and United. A number of the features that I showed last month in web access that aren't explicitly tied to other applications will be available in Team or United as well. And let's see, I think I have time for one more question. Let's see, will there be an option to stay signed in for SSO? Can you cache credentials for a period of time? It's the part of the point of the single sign-on, well, one of many points of the single sign-on is that you're not reliant on each individual's application's timeouts in that case. It's just one sort of global authentication token. So you can have it set up that it won't prompt you to sign in over and over and over again each time you connect. You'll be able to, it'll just know, okay, we've got this active token, we'll just sign you in directly through that. The whole premise of single sign-on in this scenario is very similar to scenarios where you're probably familiar, where a website will log in and say, hey, you could create an account through us, or you could authenticate through Google or Facebook, and then it uses that for authentication. And in our case, it's all within Laserfiche, but that's the general idea. So the Laserfiche directory server itself is managing everything. And at this time, I'm afraid I'm being told that we have to wrap up. Don't worry, we will post an accompanying document with the presentation that includes answers to every single question you asked. So feel free to continue asking them. And also, of course, as I've mentioned a couple times, all of us on the development team monitor and are active on our Laserfiche Answers site at answers.laserfiche.com. So please feel free to come to that for any additional questions you might have. Thank you very much for attending.